let's go ahead and look at just the West in general. You know, the West is the hot battle. I think when we look at it, you know, yes, Bama's back in the top four after Iowa's lack of uninspired play at the number 2 spot against Purdue. Makes way for Bama to jump back in after a nice, comfortable victory over Mississippi State. Gio, looking at the West, I mean, Ole Miss is probably your closest striker, but I mean, like, once again, Ole Miss still got embarrassed head-to-head against Bama. You look at Texas A&M back in the top 25. You know, they kind of brought themselves back in. And, you know, when we look at the rest, Arkansas, you know, is a team that's on the mend right now. But how do you view when you look at the West, just the talent? I mean, and we still haven't even talked about Auburn. You know, Auburn's still one of those dark horses. You still got the Iron Bowl at the end of the year, and Auburn still has some big games coming up. I mean, where do you see the West kind of shaking out? I mean, we all know it's all Bama's until somebody takes it away. But how much closer, I think, is the divide and the gap in the West than I think we seemingly always had Alabama just penciled in year and year out, outside of, like you said, an LSU aberration?
Yeah, Max, look, I think Alabama's vulnerable, man. And I think that's a game changer, right? When they appear to be just an absolute gladiator and nobody can touch them at the top of the SEC West, it's hard to even consider the A&M, Ole Miss, Auburn, Arkansas, and LSUs that are in that West, that it's hard to even think that those schools could upset Alabama. But we're in a situation where, like I said, I think Alabama's vulnerable. And I think when you look at those schools I just rattled off, A&M's already upset them. Ole Miss gave them the football, turned it over on downs 3 times and a turnover in the first half, and handed them damn near 28 points. So that game's over. You still got Auburn, you still got Arkansas, and you still have LSU if you're Alabama. And I think those 3 schools are in the meat of the West. And those 3 schools, I think all 3 of them, especially by the time you get to the end of the year, I think LSU's coming. They're figuring some things out. But all 3 of those schools are legit. To me, they're legit upset schools. They're legit a problem for Alabama. They've got all 3 of them. They got to go LSU, Arkansas, Auburn on their schedule. I believe. They still got all 3 of those left on their schedule. The remainder of the season. I wouldn't be shocked at all if one of those 3 teams were able to upset Alabama. And if they do that, that gives Alabama 2 losses and potentially Ole Miss 1 loss. And so the question here is, can Ole Miss apply real pressure to Alabama? I think Alabama is very vulnerable. It's highly likely that they will get upset this year one more time, and that'll give them 2 losses. The question is can Ole Miss run the table with LSU, Auburn, A&M, and Mississippi State still on the schedule, and others, but those are the four schools that have the potential to give them problems. And can Ole Miss upset Alabama and end up winning the West for a change? I'm not going to put a whole lot of money on it, but I'm going to tell you right now, Max, I wouldn't be shocked if Arkansas, LSU, or Auburn, one of those 3 schools, upset Alabama and really turn the West upside down.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a good shot at that, just because we've seen Bama stumble. We've seen them falter, and we've seen them crack under pressure. And I think when you look at it, like you said, the rest of that schedule being there, it is daunting. But I think for Ole Miss, having LSU, having Auburn back to back, I think gives Ole Miss a challenge. But if they can get through that gauntlet, I mean, you still got Texas A&M, and then after that, you got Vandy and Mississippi State. So I mean, you know, it's tough, but it's still doable in a lot of respects. You know, to make sure that they're on top. But I mean, once again, I think it's interesting. I think this is probably the best year to see it.
Yeah,
more so than anything else.
Yeah, Max, the Ole Miss Alabama race to the end here is going to be a very, very interesting one, much more so than what it has been in the past. I really think there's a chance that Ole Miss, if Matt Corral can stay healthy, there's a chance that Ole Miss could legit run the table the rest of the way, and there is a chance that Alabama could be upset. So when you talk about the West, the fact that Alabama's vulnerable and the meat of that West is as strong as it is, and I'm not saying they're world beaters. I'm just simply saying between Alabama coming back to the pack a little bit and the Ole Miss, Arkansas, Auburns of the world maybe being a little bit better this year than expected, I think there's a huge chance for an upset, and that would make you and I's job real fun late in the season, brother.
Yes, it will. I love when we have to figure it all out, right? I think it's also important to note there is still an Eastern Division, but it is owned by Georgia right now.
No question.
And they're on bye this week, cocktail party next week. I'm not looking forward to having to talk to Aaron Murray about cocktail party week, but I will have to do it. And I will live with it. But yeah, I think the East there's no question. I mean, Georgia, there's a reason why they're number one. There's a reason why they've earned that spot. And the gauntlet has not gotten any harder because of it. Like the target on their back, their colors already denote a target, right? They got red and white in their colors. So they're used to having a bullseye on their back. So I ain't even worried about it.